Good morning, and welcome to the First Unitarian Church of Providence, where we love beyond belief. We welcome you, whoever you are, whomever and however you love, whatever you may or may not believe. My name is Neil Bartholomew. I will be your worship associate today, and a special welcome to those of you joining us remotely from wherever you may be, near or far away. During the summer, while our ministers are away, the worship committee hosts a series of lay-led summer services, which are presented by members and friends of the congregation, with music also presented by members and friends of the congregation. This morning, we are very pleased to have Kate McGovern as our speaker. Kate joined First U after moving to Providence in 2018. Drawing on her background in community and labor organizing, she became active in the legislative ministry. Kate and the legislative ministry team organized letter-writing campaigns during coffee hour, turnout for hearings at the State House. You may have seen the picture on our website for today's service was not just a picture of Kate, it was everyone who showed up for a hearing at the State House. And UU Legislative Ministry of Rhode Island's legislative forums. She is also an instructional faculty member at College Unbound and the author of A Public Sector Journey to Operational Excellence, Applying Lean Principles to Public Policy. Kate and her husband, Michael Dumont, share 5 daughters and 8 grandchildren. Thank you to Linda Gully for providing all of the music this morning, beginning with a piece that is very dear to my heart, because it was originally written by Benedetto Marcello as the second movement of his oboe concerto, and about 15 years ago I played it from up there in the organ loft. And Linda will play a gorgeous, beautiful arrangement for solo piano of this piece by Earl Wild. Let us now center our hearts and minds as we begin our worship together. And now is the time in our service when we greet each other. So look around, find someone nearby or far away across the room who maybe you know, maybe you don't know, and introduce yourself. And let's all not forget to wave to the folks at home. So if you are somewhere closer to the front of the meeting house, hello to everybody at home. We are very glad that you're with us today. Please join in the unison chalice lighting, which is printed in your order of service. This light burns also in our hearts, and it lights the way towards harmony, justice, and hope for all. And please join in the reading of our congregational covenant. If you are not a member of our church, you're welcome to join in if you choose to. It's nice words, it has nice meaning, and so here we go. We, the members of the First Unitarian Church of Providence, with respect for the worth and dignity of each person, with wonder at the light we know by many names, and with gratitude for our deep connection to each other and to the larger web of existence, covenant to walk together in our search for truth, seeking the paths of wisdom, compassion, and justice. And our hymns today are a little bit different from usual. The first one is not in our hymnal at all, nor is even its tune in our hymnal at all. But you all know the tune. So in honor of Labor Day weekend, Kate has requested that we sing Solidarity Forever, which is to the tune of the Battle Hymn of the Republic. You know the tune. The lyrics are on the right-hand side of the inside of your order of service, and although the lyrics in the order of service don't start with the chorus, when we start singing after the little piano introduction, we will start with the chorus. That was spirited. Our reading this morning keeps us in the early part of the 20th century, which is where that song came from also. Excerpt from the State of the Union address by Franklin Delano Roosevelt, January 11th, 1944. So let's go back 80 years in our minds. This republic had its beginning and grew to its present strength under the protection of certain inalienable political rights, among them the right of free speech, free press, free worship, trial by jury, freedom from unreasonable searches and seizures. They were our rights to life and liberty. As our nation has grown in size and stature, however, as our industrial economy expanded, these political rights proved inadequate to assure us equality in the pursuit of happiness. We have come to a clear realization of the fact that true individual freedom cannot exist without economic security and independence. Necessitous men are not free men. People who are hungry and out of a job are the stuff of which dictatorships are made. In our day, these economic truths have become accepted as self-evident. We have accepted, so to speak, a second Bill of Rights under which a new basis of security and prosperity can be established for all, regardless of station, race, or creed. Among these are the right to a useful and remunerative job in the industries or shops or farms or mines of the nation, the right to earn enough to provide adequate food and clothing and recreation, the right of every farmer to raise and sell his products at a return which will give him and his family a decent living, the right of every businessman, large and small, to trade in an atmosphere of freedom from unfair competition and domination by monopolies at home or abroad, the right of every family to a decent home, the right to adequate medical care and the opportunity to achieve and enjoy good health, the right to adequate protection from the economic fears of old age, sickness, accident, and unemployment. And there it is. The right to a good education. All of these rights spell security. And remember, this is 1944. And after this war is won, we must be prepared to move forward in the implementation of these rights to new goals of human happiness and well-being. Prophetic words from 80 years ago. We now hear the joys and sorrows of the people in our congregation, as written in this book, which lives at the back of the meeting house. Our partner church in Transylvania carved the beautiful candlestick pedestal for the large candle from which we light our individual candles of joy and sorrow. A candle of appreciation for all the volunteers who made the Women's Alliance yard sale so successful. Almost $5,000 was raised. The funds will go to different nonprofit agencies. Also a candle of appreciation for the first few members who came and shopped at the yard sale. And a candle of support for my 21-year-old nephew in New York who just completed gender affirmation surgery. And something that involves joy and sorrow and everything in between. And as I share this, some of you may be moved to applause, and I request that you refrain from doing so in order to preserve the contemplative and reflective quality of this part of the service, especially as we move into our time of silence. This is the last summer service in the last year that I will be organizing the summer services. It has been just an unspeakable privilege to learn the wisdom and experience of so many of you, over 100 of you, whom I have encouraged and counseled and sometimes cajoled into presenting these services. And it's just the depth of the spiritual life of this congregation is just really astonishing. And this really has been just the most spiritually and just the most rewarding job I've ever had, just to get to know all of you. So thank you to all the people who have presented summer services over the last 12 years. Thank you to all of the musicians who have brought such richness to our summer services over these years. And thank you to all of the people who have been worship associates who sometimes didn't know what they were getting into, because you never know what's going to happen on a Sunday morning. And thank you to Reverend Liz, who has been a wonderful collaborator in all of the work that I've done on worship over these last years, several years since she's been here. And also a thank you, if he's out there somewhere in California, a thank you to Reverend James Ford, who 12 years ago took me out to lunch and overcame my resistance to taking this job. I didn't think I wanted it, but I'm very glad I took it. So. And thank you to the whole congregation for just being a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful spiritual home. Let us center ourselves now for our time of silence together. Sit comfortably, take a deep breath. Take a couple of more deep breaths at your own pace. In times of uncertainty and upheaval, it is all the more important to take the time to center ourselves, find a place of peace within ourselves, and have our actions in the world come from that place of inner peace, bringing a spirit of love into the public arena. During this time of silence, if you've lost someone close to you in the past year, you may stand or raise your hand in recognition of that loss.
Good morning. We are called to meet this moment. This is not just about defeating the threat of fascism, although defeat it we must. Our challenge is much broader and yet more basic, both spiritual and concrete. In our time together this morning, I'm going to start out with the big picture. We heard Neil read FDR's proposed Second Bill of Rights, a vision once thought achievable given the resources of this country. I'm going to ask you this morning to reflect on why what we now accept falls so far short of that. In your ideal society, what percentage of children would be poor? How many people would be living on the streets? How many elders would exhaust their life savings to qualify for barely adequate nursing homes? If we assume that FDR's proposal of housing and health care for all is unachievable, we can take a pragmatic approach. Incremental change is certainly better than the status quo. Reduce the child poverty rate, build more homeless shelters, do our best to mitigate the suffering. Today, I'm going to suggest that doing what is possible right in front of us, as we must, does not preclude us from aspiring to a broader vision. Indeed, I will argue that our faith requires us to do so. First, a bit of background. Lots of baby boomers like me came of age when it seemed like the country was moving toward a more just and equal society. The year I was born, segregation was ruled unconstitutional. Civil rights laws passed while I was in grade school. By the time I was job hunting, the want ads no longer said help wanted male and help wanted female. Sure, there were still plenty of problems, but it seemed like the worst was behind us and the rest were solvable. Then we got busy earning a living, raising our families. Many of us entered the middle class, enjoying the comforts of the consumer society while looking away from the consequences. Meanwhile, the right was organizing. 3 dominant narratives emerged. Government is the problem, taxes are bad, racist stereotypes about welfare and criminality are true. Paradoxically, it was expensive to be mean. Vast public resources went to mass incarceration, and complex bureaucracies were built to assure that aid would only go to the truly needy. Deinstitutionalization was intended to allow a least restrictive environment for people with mental illness, but state institutions were closed without viable alternatives for shelter and care. Meanwhile, the right's anti-government, anti-tax narratives pushed the politicians to cut the top tax rate from 70% down to 30%. The ballooning deficit was blamed on government spending for undeserving minorities. In 2016, we got a big wake-up call. The arc of justice was bending backwards. Racist fears and hostilities are not new in this country. These demons existed throughout our history and often prevailed over our better angels. And now the MAGA movement is calling for mass deportations. Those of us who naively thought that we had overcome the bigotry of the past now realize the struggles of the 60s and 70s were not permanently won. As our friend Steve Alquist once said to me, the empire always strikes back. The loss of reproductive rights, don't say gay, book banning, and the backlash that persists despite our insistence that Black lives matter. So what do we do about this? First, the spiritual part. Before I attended the Pathway to Membership class, I thought the quote about the arc of the moral universe was from Martin Luther King, and that President Obama reminded us that it doesn't bend on its own. It was pretty cool when I learned that this vivid moral vision came from a UU, Theodore Parker. And I was glad to learn that many Unitarians were abolitionists and often at the forefront of social justice movements. As an activist, I thought deeds, not creeds, summed it up well. And I believe that our 7 principles underscore a worldview contrary to the dominant paradigm of self-serving pillage of the earth. Our principles declare a bold collective morality which counters the narcissism of rugged individualism. This vision is needed now more than ever in the face of climate catastrophe. Just as the arc of the moral universe connects from Parker to King to Obama, the bold call to action, "We are the ones we've been waiting for," the title of Alice Walker's inspirational work, came from a poem by June Jordan commemorating the women and girls who stood up to apartheid in South Africa in 1956. Fast forward to 2023, when our friend Reverend Lisa Garcia Sampson told us of UUs in North Carolina joining in a decade-long struggle to win Medicaid expansion, gaining healthcare access for 600,000 people. Reverend Lisa urged us forward, saying, "It is time to see that we are the ones we've been waiting for. It is time to believe, to really believe in our hearts that we were made for this moment." So, are we indeed the ones we've been waiting for? Here's my theory of the case. To whom much is given, much will be required. In 2014, 10 years ago, the Pew Research Center found that the majority of UUs were older, white, well-educated, and economically comfortable. Clearly an indication of the importance of our commitment to diversify our congregations. More about that later. First, let's consider the best use of the attributes that Pew identified. Face it, folks with money and status have power. They often know their legislators by their first names. Throughout history, this power has been used to maintain systems of oppression. As we seek to undo that legacy, I suggest we have an obligation to deploy these societal advantages as a force for justice. To put it plainly, use white privilege for good instead of evil. We know diverse, growing body of UUs can be a force for good. First U members were at the forefront of the campaign for marriage equality, and in coalition with others, we've made real progress on gun safety. Shout out here to all of you who made these victories possible. Now you might ask, since it was so difficult to win on these issues, how can we possibly enact a right to housing and a right to health care? Before moving to the strategic part, first a parable. You and 2 friends are walking along a stream in the woods, and you see a baby floating in the water. You rush in and rescue the baby. Then there are 2. You rescue them as well. Then there are 3. One of you needs to keep rescuing the babies. One of you needs to run back into cell phone range to call for help. And one of you needs to run up the hill and stop who's ever throwing them in. This parable is an analogy for the need for direct service interventions to run concurrently with advocacy and organizing and getting at the root cause. It means there's a role for each of us. So how do we do this? First, a word about compassion fatigue. Everywhere we look, the needs are immense. Gut-wrenching suffering is down the street and around the globe. Where do we start? And what happens if we take a break and look away? That's why it's so important that there are a lot of us, and that we can continue to build strong and diverse congregations so we can share the work and spell one another. Let's consider the operational part in phases. Many of you are already well along the way here. First, each of you pick one or two issues that are most important to you. These will be your primary areas of focus, while still reserving some energy to respond to the call when others need surge capacity in their campaigns. After choosing your issue, choose where to focus your efforts, micro, macro, or mega level. Recall the parable about saving the babies, seeking reinforcements, or running up the hill. For example, some of us can work with loaves and fishes to feed the hungry. Others can advocate for free school lunch. Still others can join campaigns to reform global food supply chains. Some can join the caring network, driving people to doctor's appointments. Others can advocate to expand health insurance. Still others can organize for universal health care for all, including long-term care. We can look beyond our borders to take a stand against injustices around the world, such as the sufferings by Armenians and so many others. These are just a few examples. So how do we have the capacity for such varied lines of effort? We need to be nimble. It's a marathon with intermittent sprints. Some of our activities are at a regular, consistent pace. Others will have peaks and valleys, and there will be times when we need all hands on deck. Remember, incremental change can make a meaningful difference. Restoring the expanded child care tax credit can reduce the child poverty level back to 2001's level, 5%. Anybody's ideal society on that? But it's an improvement, right? It's going to mitigate suffering. It won't cure poverty. So similarly, forgiving medical debt won't get health care for all, but it can prevent thousands of bankruptcies. At the same time, we must not lose sight of FDR's vision. Perhaps you'd be surprised to learn that in 1968, the UUA General Assembly's Statement of Social Witness endorsed the goals of the Poor People's Campaign, including national health insurance and a massive program of building and renovation for housing. And the UUA continues to be a partner in the Poor People's Campaign. Now this campaign is seeking to bring millions of poor and low-wealth people to the polls. Face it, there's a reason politicians promise to help the middle class. They know that poor people are the least likely to vote. And they assume that middle-class voters hate taxes and think poor people are lazy. Suppose all voters, poor, working, middle, and upper class, all asked them to eradicate homelessness and provide health care for all. How's that for a stretch goal? As we close out, I will return to the immediate. Seek out what's already going on in your issue. Join with others to maximize existing initiatives that can make a real difference in people's lives. For example, while opening 45 pallet shelters in Providence falls far short of FDR's vision, these shelters can offer relief to some of the unhoused people who have been driven from local encampments. What can we do to make sure that Echo Village really opens this month? And working locally, we can build alliances across societal divisions of race, ethnicity, and class. We can join with neighbors in Washington Park to fight for environmental justice at the Port of Providence. So how do we connect with these efforts? First, use strategic plan includes the establishment of a justice committee as an umbrella to coordinate our many social justice efforts. I like to call it the Justice League because it sounds more dynamic than committee. I also like the superhero connotation. In any case, it's in its developmental stage. We've been thinking of justice fairs during coffee hour with display tables for various causes you can join. As Clarissa Estes wrote, "We were made for these times. For years, we have been learning and practicing, been training for, and just waiting to meet on this exact plane of engagement." To sum it up, find your issue and connect with others in our congregation and in our community to put faith into action. I believe that together we can save the babies while also running up the hill. While practicing charity and kindness in our community, let's also swing for the fences.
Thank you, Kate. So now you can rise in body or spirit and join in hymn number 169, "We Shall Overcome." Once again, we're doing something a little non-standard. We will sing all the verses in the hymnal, and then you will see in your order of service there's an additional verse in Spanish. We will sing it once for you to kind of learn it and once for you to sing it out. So, hymn number 169. Now in Spanish in your order. Otra vez en español. Now, one more time, the first verse in English quietly. We have a few different texts that we tend to use during the summer to introduce the offertory. I was planning to use the one about how we are a spiritual community who govern ourselves through a democratic process and who support ourselves through our own collective generosity, because it seemed very appropriate to Kate's topic. But that was just used last week, and you may or may not remember that, but I do. So I'll just say that everything that we do in the world, our actions, our thoughts, and what we support with our resources is an expression of our values. We invite you to join in the spirit of love and generosity as the offering for the mission and vision of this church will now be gratefully received. And as always, thank you for all that you give, all that you do, and all that you are. you, Linda. We have a few invitations for stuff going on in the life of this congregation. The UU The Vote project is continuing today. Bruce and Joe will be in the first parlor, so you need to go into the parish house, take a right, and they'll be at a table right there. We've, so far, First U people have taken 2,000 postcards. This is the last batch. The idea here is that these postcards go out to potential voters in key areas of the country and to encourage them to vote. We also have a save the date. The UU Legislative Ministry of Rhode Island's Fall Forum is scheduled for Sunday, October 6th at Westminster Unitarian Church in East Greenwich from 1 to 4 p.m. If you have any questions about that, you can talk to Kate. The theme of that gathering will be defending democracy in our state and in our nation. Next Sunday will be the beginning of our regular church year. It will be our annual in-gathering service. Our ministers will be back. Our new director of religious education is actually here today, but she will be here in an official capacity next week. And it'll be lots of fun. What time does it start, the service? 10:30, okay. But come a little bit early because there's kind of a gathering out front, and show up early and hang out. But this service starts at 10:30. Oh, and we need coffee hour snacks for next week. The wheels have not started rolling on all of the kind of means for organizing that. So we need people to bring stuff for coffee hour for next week. If you can bring some, please talk to Jen Nardone, who's in the back there. I think most of you know who Jen is. She'll be around here after the service. You can talk to her if you can bring something next week. And of course, be sure to check the First U Times, our weekly newsletter that is the single source for news, events, and everything that is happening at First Unitarian. First U Times is sent by email to all members, friends, and others who sign up to receive it. You can access it through our website or fill out a registry form in the back of the meeting house, and you'll get it. Please join in the unison chalice extinguishing in your order of service. We carry the flame of peace and love and hope until we meet